couple of remarks to the panel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Angela.
Michelle, we're live.
Right, so we are live for the streaming of our finalist interviews tonight with our parent caregiver group. I want to just first thank you all so much on behalf of the board. I'm Michelle Nichols and I'm serving as the school board president right now. I know that you gave up a lot of time to do the training, to think about the questions that are really important to you, and for being able to do all of the interviews tonight. So I just want to thank you on behalf of the board. And we hope that you all have a good experience learning more about the finalists. We hope that you're able to treat this as you know, an objective process as much as you can and collect your feedback and thoughts. And yeah, as board members, we're gonna be looking forward to your feedback. You're one of the live streamed panels tonight, so there will be many in our community who are watching and thanking you for your service and time. So hope you have a good night. Thanks.
Good evening.
Jewelry.
Yes.
My name is Angela Jenkins, and I will be serving as the lead panelist tonight. Which we are comprised of the parent caregiver interview session. And first, I want to thank you for being here, and congratulations for being finalists. As I mentioned, we represent the larger parent and caregiver community in the district, and we're very excited for the opportunity to meet you. Before we get started, I would like to highlight the format of our time together. We plan to cover 6 questions in total within the time allotted, which is roughly 35 minutes. And thus I recommend spending perhaps no more than 5 minutes in your response to allow some time at the end of the session for any questions you may have for us. I will also ask for all of us to speak into the microphone to ensure that our conversation is audible to our audience who is joining us live or the member. And to ensure that we stay on task and on time, Mallory here has graciously volunteered to be our timekeeper. So due to the time constraint, I'm just gonna quick go through the panelists here and have each one of us introduce ourselves, and then we can get started with the question. As I mentioned, my name is Angela, and I currently have a 5th grader at Lowell Elementary and also an 8th grader at O'Keefe Middle School. I've been residents of Madison for almost 20 years and 9 years in the MMSD community. We are a multiracial and multilingual family, and just looking forward to the today. And that I will pass on to Bruce.
My name is Sarah Jr. I am native of Madison. I have a 9th grader, and a 4th grader that is principal at 3rd University to Wisconsin School of that.
Hi, my name is Sonny Tao. I've been native out of Madison, been here for 30 years. Got 2 kids in the school district at Lakeview Elementary. They are both enrolled into the bilingual program there. And so they are in kindergarten and second grade.
Good evening. My name is Mario Garcia Sierra, and I have a kid in Battle Rock Middle School. Battle Rock is a municipality charter school in the area which focuses on sustainability, also multicultural and bilingual family. It will be.
Hi, my name is April Today. I have an 8th grader at Hamilton Middle School, and I myself also am a part of the state. Valeria, I have a work
Hi, my name is Matt Becker, and I am a third and fourth grader at Marquette.
With that, we will kick it off with Otis on the first one.
What systems have you implemented to ensure school safety and address disruptive classroom behavior? How have you balanced the needs of the students, teachers, and the ensure the environment is conducive to learning? All students have the opportunity to learn, but for the results you achieve.
So when it comes to very complex topic, but ultimately all students should have the best place for them, right? Something with socially or with attention point happening to reduce the energy. That is in the main classroom in which things to be able to resolve or get what they need. But it is very important that students are always whether they are learning how to learn. Or they are taking their assignments to a different space and working to get that. Because it increases them and not expect to push students out. Homes, and disrupt parents' work life and other things. There ultimately, for me, there needs to be a very tight framework from when we choose to apply ultimately suspension approach. The work that I will point to is when I was and this work ultimately supported the creation of something called a student zone. Essentially was the most underprivileged principals who were given more autonomy to try out things and pilot things and scale things. The ultimate that we would leverage to solve broader problems with this. So principals directly reported to my office. One of the things that we have piloted is that how to remove suspensions as a tool altogether at the second grade. We had already done it at the elementary and early grades, and in fact, Texas had even passed a law that said that it banned it in those grades. Yet, secondary level, we want to push to minimize the suspensions, and we began to pilot some resets, or think about that. And in those spaces, we establish them with our partners. Sometimes there are partners looking to do great work. I'll bring them into the school day. Oftentimes we think that great till referral happens outside of this creative space to be able to provide them. Partnership CIS, as well as the term principle that enable to visit. Essentially, the idea was using that restorative justice framework, get every student, but at the same time, you're not disrupting the learning. Always learning. They're always learning. And so especially when it comes to social emotional skills. So that will always be my philosophy. And not to kick at the kid or kick out the child from school. Obviously, there are certain things that hopefully will lead to But I'm not going to jump into it with things like willful. Kids have done not taking their money. Throwing out a first word, it's like, like we have to be able to teach our kids how to sell. And frankly, adults have to relearn that in a post-COVID world where we're more likely to be meaner to each other if you've noticed in society. So this is not something that just happens naturally. You have to practice, you have to learn it. The best time to prepare for, we said, college, career, and community are those moments that you do.
So let's move on to question 2 here. What strategies have you found most effective in balancing the diverse learning needs of student groups, including students with disabilities, multilingual learners, and advanced learners? Provide specific examples of your approach for each group and highlight the key decisions made in creating an inclusive and equitable learning environment for all students.
So for me, what is absolutely crucial, regardless of a student's individual needs, is all students must get grade level content and the high expectation. So defining what that proficiency marker is or what mastery is, all students are held to that standard. Now, all students don't follow the same staircase of supports to be able to get to that standard. But ultimately, we have to make sure that there isn't a culture of low expectations, lowering the quality of assignments, lowering the standard, right? Saying that teaching to the proficiency bar for this kid is not worth it. Like, I do not believe in that philosophy. I'm someone who has worked in high poverty schools, 90% Title I, 90% majority minority, 2-3 grade levels behind, and narrow gaps. It can happen and definitely can, but it that a teacher by themselves cannot be everything to every student all the time at every moment. So you have to develop a highly sophisticated network of support and innovations to the school day that basically supports our kids during that differentiated block. And that differentiated block has several different actors, right? It has self-driven learning. There's students who can be able to engage and accelerate, whether they are working with learning software or they're working with a group to work on a project. There are students who are getting small group instruction when it comes to interventions, and it can be an instructional assistant. It could be a grow your own teacher candidate who is doing a residency classroom, right? It could be a pull-out model. Ultimately, it starts with high quality tier 1 that everyone is getting, right? With multiple access points. And then after you do an assessment, a formative assessment, and you see where people are, you have to differentiate with a network of support. It cannot just be on the teacher's back. It has to happen with a set of actors as well as leveraging technology creatively to be able. To me, the highest performing classroom ultimately is a classroom where you can see student-driven learning, right? We should always aspire to do that. Coaching where students are helping one another, and students are able to self-regulate to be able to solve things. But in order to really help students, have to differentiate using a set of resources that involve things beyond the teacher, but it's anchored in the teacher's ultimately say in terms of how to reach on it.
Thank you. We'll move forward. Question 3 when you're ready. April?
Some MMSD schools are populated with children of dual income, well-educated homeowners who have access to supplemental resources. Other schools in MMSD are in attendance areas where the majority of students live in low income or transitional housing, with caregivers struggling to meet basic needs. What specific programs or policies have you used to address these opportunity and resource gaps that exist across different school areas in the same district?
So when I was state superintendent of Maryland, I leveraged our federal state set aside money to launch an initiative called Maryland Leads. One of the 7 strategies in Maryland Leads was transforming neighborhoods through community school. Maryland had invested in the community school strategy. The Maryland State Legislature is investing, is putting money And of those 400 today, a little over 400 are community schools. However, the implementation has been only, right? Done well, right, is an art and a science. It is a robust network of partners, reinforcing and supporting the work of teachers. And there is mutually beneficial relationships, all to make sure students wrap around social and emotional and academic needs are met. So the goal was to get people to work better together. I'm a huge proponent of collective impact. And so the Transforming Neighborhoods initiative, Transforming Neighborhoods with Community Schools initiative was, the idea was to get our districts across the state to work with their partners and submit proposals so their fates would be intertwined. Often what happens is school systems budget new school and then they go up to the partners. Versus designing with them side by side and actually partaking in a robust community asset process and see where gaps are. And so for me, it was very important to be able to set up these collective impact initiatives with a strong backbone. And so we gave funding to be able to provide a strong backbone nonprofit entity that anchored the school system as well as the very proud to say we have kick-started and launched several different of these collective impact initiatives where community schools serve as the hub to be able to provide wraparound services across these very communities that you've seen, right? For example, chronic absenteeism, right? Food insecurity, housing assistance, etc. All of those are needs, and whether it's a rural district, or it's urban as Baltimore City, or even in our affluent districts in Baltimore County, where pockets of poverty. The idea was when you have all these elementary schools strategies running in different directions and straining partnerships and the impact you have. How do you get smarter about how you organize the resources so you can better service the zip codes in which you can have the most impact? So for me, it was about getting people to work and take themselves that work related to food deploying for services.
In order to build trust, transparent communication is key. Please describe how you have implemented systems of clear and reciprocal communication between administration, individual schools, teachers, staff, families, and students. How about the MMSD community and rebuild trust so you can appropriately represent and
Listen, learn, and learn. You can't just start being work, right? There is a set of things I have to do and say. Sometimes you are just silently observing as a participant. I am very big about shadowing our staff members, our community members, and our students. It all started with students shadowing students. And Rod and we are classroom teaching the Zoom where 20 people want to talk about. I will be that student of the day, do their assignment. Whether it is doing gym with them or course or taking calculus PC, I need a lot of help during that class, but that is something I do a lot about. So for me to really take in the community, right, there is no reason why in my first year I have not taken in through the lens of it. That's going to be very important to me, and I can do that multiple times over. Given the size of the district, and I worked in big systems, and so how long that takes and what the schedule will look like. That's very important to me. And to me, that level of data, I'm a big data nerd, quantitative data and qualitative data, but the best quantitative data for me is not just survey, it's the micro level stories that add up to bigger things that you need to know. For me, where things often go well, implementation right for initiatives and things that you're trying to get buy-in in, have to think about the social and emotional impact and connection that's happening on an individual. The best way to learn that is to the greatest extent possible, immerse yourself in the lived experiences of the individual that MMSD serves. So that's going to be very important to me. So shadow, and I'm going to bring my love of doing that. And I'm going to do that across the board. The next thing that I would share is I'm very big on having cross-functional thinking when driving initiatives. Oftentimes, the table is set with one-dimensional expertise, and we don't bring a cross-functional lens to it. I've been so used to operating like that. To me, there's no other way I know how to operate. I've been chief strategy officer for 2 larger districts that we had to transform. And it required me with a lean team to be able to navigate across offices and communities to launch these models, to get parents to take in a new process, all of those kinds of things to me matter. When it comes to a problem of practice, when it comes to an issue, it is very important to me that the table mention of ideas, we think that the best idea. Now, you gotta have a strong facilitator, you gotta have some kind of framework by which you can ultimately get to solutions. Ultimately, it's very important to have solutions, but people they'll understand. It's very important to them to understand your why and why you're moving forward. And even if they disagree, they are not surprised as to what the motivation was to move in that direction. You're never going to get 100% consensus. The goal is to get majority consensus and for the greatest good, especially amongst marginalized communities. But ultimately, you got to give people the space to believe with people who are not similar in terms of their role and sort of with experience, better ideas to
Thank you. Shall we move on to the next question? Jamie?
Can you outline strategy for supporting and empowering the staff and cultivating a positive and collaborative culture? And in specific, can you talk directly about ways that you would improve and recruitment?
one when it comes to just overall that culture. One of the things that is emerging, there's a lot of science. And so for me, it's very important, again, going back to that cross-functional thinking, that's cross-functional groups. That is important to me. A very active central office is one that is in constant motion in a whether they're meeting for 3 months, whether they're meeting for 2 weeks, where they're coming and solving problems of practice. For me, that's very important. And your problems of practice are rooted to students' needs and such. And sometimes we're focused on the specific issues related to resource allocation. Either way, what is very important to me is that there are work groups that are focused on problems of practice, essential questions, and they're constantly driving for that change. And that, to me, ultimately builds a culture of trust, a culture of creativity, a culture of best practices rising to the top, and ultimately people are able to take that back to their own teams and be able to have ideas better stick to the bones of the organization. So that's important. So that's one thing that's going to be my most important that all the time. Now, you're not tackling 100 problems of practice in a year, but you're tackling some big rocks and something. And those work groups can be a mix of teachers, principals. It depends on the. Tell you right off the bat, there's no topic that I don't think that you're never going to do a presentation. Just know that you're always going to have to have teachers and school leaders as well as staff on the table to be able to help districts solve problems. The central office can do it on their own. When it comes to teacher retention and recruitment, something that I am very proud of is that as part of that Maryland Leads initiative that I shared with the state superintendent, one of the strategies was staff recruitment and retention. And so we did a few things. We created a whole culture around Grow Your several Grow Your Own initiatives, starting as early as high school, taking the pair as well as career changers, subsidizing the college education and putting them through core experiences. And those cohorts were more diverse than the general teacher population, because ultimately you're not going to tackle diversity. So that was one piece in terms of teacher retention and pipeline. And the biggest factor in having strong cohorts is people from the community. You're more likely to have people stick around and stay in the community if you recruit from. That's why having your paraprofessionals become teachers over time, or recruiting career changers, or that is ultimately going to be your game changer. People are more likely to stick around, more likely to have investment. Doesn't mean I'm not into stealing the best teachers from other states or other counties, but at the end of the day, your best shot is making sure you're cultivating retention. One of the things that I loved that we were able to do is one, during coming out of COVID, one of the first things we were able to do is rather than across the board salary increases, they were able to provide retention bonuses. Now, retention bonuses is a band-aid, but it helped, right? It helped in terms of just coming out of COVID and all the hard work that folks have done, and being able to provide that, especially for our smaller school systems, was a big deal. But I didn't just stop there. Retention is not just about compensation, it's also about the dynamics. So we did something called Reimagining the School Day. And again, it comes back to what I shared in my intro video and what I mentioned to you every day. But we have designed this system to create that burden and pressure on them. And we think that they can, but they really cannot. Ultimately, you need a network of supports to be able to provide the level of differentiation needed. I was a great teacher, middle school teacher, class size of 36. Those were our class sizes in urban Los Angeles. But I was also a damn good social worker because I needed to do that. I needed to stay till 6 o'clock. I needed to do home visits. I needed to have facts in my class. I needed to do all those things, and that's not a sustainable model. And so there's a reckoning, I think, that needs to happen solving the teaching shortage. Yes, our teachers should be the best paid individuals and most competitive in the country. And I will always fight for that and work for that no matter what. And how we can pull that off fiscally and responsibly. But at the same time, we need to also reimagine the day and the structure of the day. Right? I see them as specialists, right? Conducting brain surgery every day to try to get the best learning developed. At the same time, we're also asking them to become social workers over time, and we're not doing school day to inside our school system to think about how you can create that network and what supports and more better, smarter, and faster way.
With limited resources and funding in our district, what innovative approaches have you implemented to create expense savings in one area that has been redirected to areas of greater need and greater impact? What opposition did you face in redirecting those funds, and how did you overcome that opposition? What results were achieved?
So I'm a huge proponent of something called zero-based budgeting. Really believe that you should justify every dollar that you spend at central office and how you're spending it and why. So one of the exercises that I did when I was in Maryland, every division in office in the State Department, this is a State Department lens, where we support all of our school systems. I had them go through a zero-based budgeting exercise. Discretionary funding to be able to do creative grant making. And in order to do that, I had a suspicion that we had dollars sitting that were not going, unused travel budgets, unused budgets that just were there for professional learning. So ultimately what we had every one of our teams do is go through a zero-based budgeting experience. So I've been used to zero-based budgeting, and they thought right off the bat, I was looking to make cuts. Not looking to make cuts. I was looking to get them to, one, begin to tie their financial planning to programmatic outcomes. And two, I was looking to make sure that my offices that really needed more money got the money from offices that really didn't need the money that already allocated to them. And so to me, that exercise in zero-based budgeting and being able to rebuild that budget and show why every expense mattered and why helped me allow to create a pool of funds and then redirect that in a more equitable manner. In the case of the state education agency, it was being able to equip my teaching and learning teams and other offices so they can better support our school system. In a district sense, right, it would be to reallocate that back down to the school and see what that looks like. So, but the resistance ultimately was people think you're already automatically making cuts, but when they go through the exercise, you've got to help them. Everyone is a natural budget analyst, right? You got to help them with the tools to do it. They will. Their budget is truly a budget of private dollar counts down to the cent to what you need it for, and it shouldn't be just boarding or having budgets just sit there when other teams really need it. And so it's kind of how I approach things when it comes to this question or anything else that I would apply to.
And I just want a quick check in with my panelists here to see if we might want to go into one of our optional questions, or shall we move into perhaps a Q&A? So it looks like we have about roughly 13 minutes of our scheduled time. I would like to open it up for an opportunity for you to ask us any questions that that you may have.
So when you think about your time so far as a parent in the system, what is something that you can tangibly point to that has really been a game-changing thing, not just for your child, but for other children? One of the challenges, right, in the school system is every parent wants, but it's about making decisions that are best for all children. I believe your child by making that decision. So when I say this question, what is something that has been done for children, right? Whether it's a policy shift or that really had a game-changing effect for children that are not just your children.
So I have 4 children. My oldest is 24. And in the Madison School District system, graduated from private school. And then I have, well, when my oldest was, I wasn't in his main school. I only 4K, so he went 4K through 6th grade DLI. So that program, expanding it through other Madison schools, really benefited not just my, but also other students in the district to make that growth and network.
So when I was a student, I learned that the social emotional learning was not in. So when my children actually started school, I was actually very surprised and very happy that that was an important component of their day to day, because not only were they able to then start realizing and understanding how to regulate themselves, as you pointed out, but then because they were able to as well too, that actually then like it's compounds and actually, I guess they're able to actually utilize those skills to then treat children around them with more respect as well as be aware of the feelings that, you know, someone else might be experiencing based on my own feelings. So that's something that definitely has been beneficial too. But I'm going on the DLI report, but then more on the, I guess, bilingual front. I mentioned earlier that my two children are part of the Moke Bilingual program, and that's not done just justice for my children in preserving heritage, but actually for our greater Moke community as well too. And so that's something that I'm a strong advocate for, as well as very appreciative that MMSD recognized that, hey, there's an opportunity. So a big part of our community here, so let's actually create some sort of a program to allow that opportunity to allow the community.
The next question is on communication engagement for you as an individual parent within your physical lives and work and things that you do. What is the most effective thing that your school does for you to keep your awareness about what is district level? And I'm specifically saying at the district level, not school level. So your school might be using your Mind app or other things to talk to you. I'm more interested in how do you know has been helpful for you as a parent, given stuff. What has been the most effective?
When I am trying to learn more about what's going on at the district level, it's usually some internet research that I'm doing on my own, looking at what's happening on Reddit or medicine.com or other more public facing resources are what comes to mind, as opposed to anything that I'm being given by the district, but it's also possible that it's slipping them in terms of what I do receive from these groups.
Is there anything that proactively goes out from the district to you guys that feels to happen with the district, or is that something you would have to go through yourself? Or is there something similar to having the school send out things?
District does send out what I believe to be a weekly district newsletter. It's very lengthy and it has, you know, it's like your usual newsletter that you get that it just expands them more and more. And I believe that comes out weekly. And to be honest, for a long time, I didn't see it in my inbox because I think with spam filtering my box for a while. So maybe you may have that in your email, but I know that it's in, you know, filtered to spam. So you may want to take that out. I do that from time to time and I'll find something, of course, after the fact.
To share something quickly, I think that social media really helps a lot. And of course, but I think I mean, a lot of issues are complex and they require time to understand it. But when you see maybe good story about it, then you want to go to the page and therefore. But that might be an area that might need better strategy. And maybe you consider more depending on how parents want to receive communications. And for example, Spanish speakers, like we use a lot of WhatsApp. There are a lot of WhatsApp channels there, just leveraging what the community.
This question is more of a broad question. So you guys had a question about rebuilding trust. So it's been a theme that I've seen in a few different external panels, panels made up of folks who don't work directly inside the district, but work with the district or have students in the district. From your perspective, what is it about this notion of trust? Is that trust? Source of that.
Okay.
A version that can, that allows me to use my 13 minutes.
About 5 minutes. Anyone?
I'll start, but I know that everyone's thinking about this. I think that, from what I see, from what I hear from my own circles, I think, a lot of times comes down to, how the students are performing in school. What attention they are receiving, what discipline they are receiving. And a lot of parents are not happy, I would say. A lot of students are not happy and have, voiced their opinion, or they've been asked to voice their opinion. And when you voice your opinion, you expect them to listen to you. You want to see some action taken there. So maybe I'll focus on that. Maybe a lot of parents have been asked about what we think about the district. We give our time or opinion, but then nothing happens with that. So maybe that would be one piece in terms of what needs to be built. Like when you ask for feedback, people expect some action there. That would be one, but then I know that different parent groups, again, they have their things of how they don't provide enough resources for the DLI program, for example, or who's paying attention to immigrant students. A lot of that. So how do
I would just add that, trying to stay. I think that there was an expectation, that is rightfully placed, that there's transparency in what's happening, both good. I think there was a way that communication was presented that it was hard to tell whether or not it was really genuine or just kind of a mouth, just kind of saying. Intelligent, and we see that. So I think we're really looking for somebody who's strong enough to say what's going well, but also saying what's going wrong, and then trying to reach out and get support around the most, which is obviously students, families, and teachers and administration. So
Thank you.
So to that as well too, that I know that in our profile, there's a question asking, I guess what's your group for the district, or what did the superintendent do then? I very much highlighted the fact that they didn't say one-sided or one-way conversation where information was just being pushed down to us. There is no avenue that I feel like I can actually try to give them feedback and be heard and feel comfortable or know that I'm being heard as well as something's being done. So just my personal experience, just trying to navigate who to contact for the mobile banking program. I had to pretty much just blast everybody that I could and, hope that somebody would just reach out to me. I knew the different players, I just didn't understand how to navigate, like who does what, because it's just a nightmare to actually try to understand the hierarchy in the district, how to actually traverse, like who to contact, who to communicate. And I mentioned in my feedback there, we need someone to actually just to help us navigate how to get around. And not only that, some place where then we can actually push up the chain and get some kind of resolution and or some kind of response, because oftentimes it's just silent. And I think someone made a comment in our group here when we met with like, oh, don't push it up the chain because it will just disappear. And that kind of just summed it up for me with regards to how I feel with I guess the district right now.
Happy answer. So that's those are all my questions. Thank you guys. Take that last comment. Something just to know about me is I'm very passionate about the notion of a time tax and and it's falls especially hard on historically disadvantaged communities. And to navigate a maze, to navigate bureaucracy is very problematic. And government tends to create this time tax on families that makes it a bit harder. That's very personal to me. I navigated LA County forms with my former parents to be able to access services. It was horrible. And so ever since I joined central office, I always think about the user experience, right? How long does it take to get something? How long does it take to get a response? How many clicks to this, right? And ultimately, that time tax factor is very frustrating. And this contributes to lack of trust. It contributes to a lack of stakeholder engagement. Very important. We're not just in the business of making sure our students are learning, but also in invested with the customer service that we give them. So that is the matter. That's what. You guys.
Oh, how are you?
Great, we can hear you. Welcome, Dr. Stokes. My name is Angela Jenkins and we'll be serving as the lead panelist for tonight's parent caregiver session. Wanting to first thank you for being here with us. I know it's been a long day and congratulations on being one of the finalists.
Thank you.
We're very excited for the opportunity to meet you. And before we get started, just wanted to highlight the format of our time together. We plan to cover approximately 6 questions within the time allotted, which is roughly 35 minutes. And as I recommend that we spend no more than 5 minutes in your response to allow for some time at the end of the session for any questions that you may have for us. I also asked for all to speak into the microphone. We did receive some feedback that, the audience who are watching us live at home is having a little bit difficulty on the audio aspect. So I want to make sure that our conversation is audible to them. And to ensure that we stay on task and on time, Mallory has graciously volunteered to be our timekeeper. Now, that being said, I will kick us off and with introductions. But before I do that, perhaps you'd like to spend a few minutes to introduce yourself to us.
Of course, I am in the evening Yvonne Stokes. During the day at work, I'm Dr. Yvonne Stokes, and I am a superintendent, recently separated, and I am ecstatic about being able to come here and support you all. So I've had lots of job opportunities in the sense that I've worked as superintendent, assistant superintendent. I've worked as director of special education. I've worked as the person in charge of all the ELL and WIA curriculum I've worked in many roles, and so I'm privileged to have the opportunity to speak with you all about how I might be able to help our district.
Great, thank you. As I mentioned, my name is Angela Jenkins, and I currently have a 5th grader at Lowell Elementary and an 8th grader at O'Keefe Middle School here in the east side of Madison. We've been residents of the Madison area for, I guess, 20 years, maybe close enough to call myself native or Madisonian. And just over 9 years in the MMSD community. We are a multiracial, multilingual family, and I'm excited to be here. I will for intro.
Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Stokes. My name is Otis Harris Jr. I'm a native of Madison. I have 9th grade at Republic High School and a book here that is transported through MMSD to glad to have you welcome.
Evening, my name is Sunny Tao. I have 2 kids enrolled at Lakeview Elementary and both are in one is in kindergarten and the other one is second.
Good evening. My name is Mario Garcia Sierra, and I have an 8th grader at Battle Rock Middle School, a few minutes from here. And Battle Rock is an instrumentality charter school that focuses on sustainability, project-based learning, and really happy with the experience there so far. Class of 2 April.
Thank you. My name is April Hidea, and I have an 8th grader at Hamilton Middle School, and I myself was also a product of MMSD.
Oh,
My name is Mallory Garcia. I'm a 1st grader at Wilson Elementary School.
Hi, my name is Olivia, and I have a 4th grader at Emerson Elementary. We've lived in Madison for the last 10 years and been in MMSD for the last 5.
Welcome, thanks for being here. My name is Jamie Becaire Crown, and I have a recent 2023 graduate and also a senior at West.
Hi, my name is Matt Becker, and I have a 3rd and 4th grader at Marquette Elementary.
and nice to meet the last 4 of you. Thank you all again for having me here. I know it's late in the evening, so I really appreciate the fact that you're willing to come out.
Likewise, thank you. That being said, I don't want to take up more time. We'll kick it off with Otis on the first question.
What systems have you implemented to ensure school safety and address disruptive classroom behavior? how have you balanced the needs of students, teachers, and the overall classroom to make sure the environment is conducive to learning and all students have the opportunity to learn? What results were achieved?
So I'm going to speak to that question from kind of a blend of. What I will say is that when we start talking about behavior in classrooms, we have to do some proactive support. So the first thing that we would need to do is, first of all, make sure that not only our students and our teachers, but our parents understand what are the goals and expectations, not only in the building, but in the actual classroom. And with that being said, when we establish what the expectations are, because children typically like to know what are the boundaries, what can I do and what can I not do. When we establish that, we also need to work with parents to understand, are there specific needs or are there things in our protocol that might cause their particular child, to need more supports. And that can be through conversation with the parent. It might be that the child has an IEP or behavioral supports. It may be that the child has an English language plan. It may be that a child is simply somebody who has issues with self-regulation and they've been referred through the MTSS process to have supports via the social worker or school counselor or behavior support staff. But with that being said, you're trying to be proactive and you want to understand the individual students in your classroom because they're not all the same. They may all be in the classroom, but they have different and varied needs. And if you know ahead of time what might be a trigger for a child, maybe they have some adverse childhood experiences. If you know what might be a trigger, you can be more equipped to deal with the disruptive behavior. So let's fast forward and say, now you have a disruptive behavior that you as a teacher are concerned about. The very first protocol that I have put in place when I was a principal with my staff was your words have power. Your words in the time of a crisis have the power to de-escalate or escalate. So we teach de-escalation strategies so that our teachers can understand that what's in my power in my wheelhouse to be able to support. But beyond de-escalation strategies, we also make sure that we have resources, boots on the ground, human capital resources, people who deal with behavior on a daily basis and they're experts that they can come in while the behavior is occurring and to help walk the child through things that they've been learning on how to control that behavior or how to react. That's not to say that everything is going to come out perfect. You can put these strategies in place, but children are children and they have bad days just like adults. And so at the end of the day, you have to also have processes and procedures where when a behavior that is showing is not in a situation where you, a teacher alone, can control it, or maybe even if you've had outside help, we have to have places for our children to be able to go and have their quiet time, downtime, regroup, just time away, and then be able to process what happened, why did it happen, what were the triggers, what might I do next differently, and try to grow and learn from that experience. That is very much part of what we call social justice. So with that being said, we just have to make sure that we have processes and procedures in place, not only for the students, but for our staff also. Because, when I was a building principal, we had what we call a tap out. Teachers sometimes get overwhelmed or they're dealing with so much that we provide a support where they can tap out for about 20 minutes. Someone comes in, takes over the class and get their collective self together.
To question number 2. What strategies have you found most effective in balancing the diverse learning needs of student groups, including students with disabilities, multi-language learners, and advanced learners? Provide specific examples of your approach for each group and highlight the key decisions made in creating an inclusive and equitable learning environment for all students.
I would say the best strategies that you're going to have first off is going to be communication. And communication will involve, there again, your teachers, your students, your parents, and your administrators. And when I talk about communication, what I mean is if we're going to support the needs of our students who are exceptional learners, or what you might call students within special education programming, or our students who are multilingual or English language learners, or even our students who are in gifted programs, if we're going to support the needs of all of our students, we need to, first of all, make sure that we understand the approaches to supporting those needs. So parents, some do and some don't always know what we mean when we talk about, for example, WIDA indicators, world-class instructional design and assessments. What does that look like, sound like, and feel like? So the communication part is we need to meet with parents to learn from them what our students need and to help them understand in the school district, here's what we utilize to support children. How will this work for your child? We do this assessment that tells us here's where your child is, and that's in the ELL plan. The same thing with IEPs, individualized education program for our students who are exceptional learners. We talk about what are their foundational skills for what they know and understand and are able to deliver. Where are the areas that might be gaps for them? So I'm giving all these examples, but at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that we need to make sure that we look at what they need, and then there's a concept about the word just slipped my mind, but there's a concept about indicators. I'll just use that word. Indicators that might complexity. That's the word. I'm sorry. There's complexity indicators so that when we do school-based budgeting, we look at complexity indicators and say, in this particular building, I have XYZ number of students who have IEPs, XYZ number of students who might be English language learners, or any other category that you might want to look at. The complexity indicator will say, in the district, we're given this many dollars are being directed to our schools. Okay, so now we look at that and we say, but this school has a higher need based on this complexity, and you assign dollars to those complexities. You look at how many students are being impacted, and therefore you can hire the addition of staff in a particular building that might be needed to support students. So that, to me, is how you would balance. Some MMSD schools are populated with children of dual income, well-educated homeowners who have access to supplemental resources. Other schools in MMSD are in attendance areas where the majority of students live in low income or transitional housing, with caregivers struggling to meet basic needs. What specific programs or policies have you used to address these opportunities and resource gaps that exist across different school areas in the same district? Well, that's a good question, and in some ways it's similar to the last question that I gave, the answer that I gave. But what I will say is that we do have federal and state dollars that typically run through our schools in the way of like Title I dollars or ESL. There's different dollars that run through our system that we can direct to certain needs. McKinney-Vento, there's very funds and resources, but we don't want to just rely on those resources. So there again, in much the same fashion of what I just shared, because we do building-based budgets, I believe we need to, if we're not already doing it, we need to make sure that in each building, every building has its own culture, every community has its own culture. So you need to bring in some of the community leaders, parents and district leaders and supports with community stakeholders to find out what are the resources in this community that we could pull together with the school and support. And it may be, for example, and I've done this before with the church, where the church has supports that they have where kids can go to a learning center, and or that they have mentoring for our males, so you want to look at all the resources and work together with the school to decide what can we do to better meet the needs of that particular income, and it's of that particular community, and it is different across every community. With that being said, though, we have to have what we call non-negotiables. Those are things that every school needs. Every school needs certain things, but then we direct dollars more specifically to the diverse needs of a particular school. So the last question and this question for me, the answer could probably fit for both.
In order to build trust, transparent communication is key. Please describe how you have implemented systems of clear and reciprocal communication between administration, individual schools, teachers, staff, families, and students. How will you learn about the MMSD community and rebuild trust so you can appropriately represent and collaborate with all members of the community?
So the first thing I would say about that question is that you have to have procedures in place so that parents know if I've got a concern or if I've got a question, who do I go to? And oftentimes as parents, we know, okay, I go to the teacher, that's usually their first course, but oftentimes there are some questions you have that teachers don't necessarily know the answers, but they would need to know where to go, or at least where to direct you. I know on the website, for example, with, I'll say IEPs, there's a parent kind of resource on the website about questions about, I always say, frequently asked questions about IEP, understanding it to help parents better navigate. I think there are many topics like that we could put some information out there, but at the end of the day, parents need to know, if I've got a question about X, Y, or Z, where can I go? Is that to my teacher? Is that to the principal? Is that to the website to find out, put a keyword in and find out what I need to do? Now, I'm not real fond of just directing people to websites because I believe in that human contact, but that is a place that we can additionally communicate. The other thing I would say is that you asked me about how will I communicate. I am a leader who I like to, what I call inspect what I expect, and to get voice from the people whose children are being impacted. And so to do that, I do what's called kind of listening, learning, supporting and building tour in every district that I go into. And what that supports is I come out to buildings and I try to meet with the staff. I meet with parents. Sometimes I have PTOs or PTAs assist me with that, but not every time works for every parent. So I try to do things at varying times, sometimes in the morning because people might work the evening shift or the night shift. You try to have multiple times in multiple locations so that parents can figure out a way to have their voice heard so that we can understand what your support system is and what support systems you might need. So basically, I'm saying that I like to communicate by getting out into the community and getting in front of our district staff and understanding what the lay of the land is. What are we doing? What do we think is working? What do we believe might help us? And those types of things help us have informed decisions.
Outline your strategy for supporting and empowering the staff and cultivating a positive and collaborative culture. And in specific, share ways that you've improved teacher retention and recruitment. Teacher retention and recruitment and empowering staff is very important. I will tell you that there's probably not one district in the United States where we're not concerned about recruitment, teachers, morale, and having teachers access and opportunity to be able to share their crafts professionally, grow, and have voice. So what I've done, and there again, every district that I've been in, is as a leader, I always want to work with the hierarchy of central office to find out what types of boots on the ground supports are we providing for teachers in our buildings and for our building leadership. What type of supports are we providing for our parents? Do we go into our buildings regularly enough to understand and see what is actually going on? And I always want to have PLCs or professional learning communities for teachers to be able to work with each other within their buildings and navigate the systems within their buildings to determine what types of supports they need. But not just do that, also have central office leadership staff come into some of those meetings to hear firsthand what it's like in the instructional practice of supporting our students and what buildings may believe that they need or don't need, and specifically what teachers think that they need. When it comes to recruitment, I've done many things, but I will tell you that some of the things that I think are lasting is when you start at the student level, because I think it's too late sometimes when we try to go out and just recruit. You do want to do that. Don't hear me say you don't. But sometimes I think it's too late in the climate of education. Now, we have to have pathways or programs where students, and they can be through CTE, we need pathways or programs where students who might be interested in supporting social work or, mental health supports or being a teacher, all of those things, to me, they're all teachers. We need to have pathways where children can look at if they're interested before they leave us. And beyond just pathways, if we can have some programs where students can earn some credits, some college credits, where they can be working with teachers and understand and learn from teachers that they like and love about what it means to be a leader and be a teacher.
And then when students go on to college, if they've gotten credits through their pathways, they're that much closer to being able to go on into an education program and support us. So that's one way that we started doing something like that in a former district. But that's one way that we can do it, is to get our students early. The other way that we can do it, I worked in a district where they didn't use this title, but this is my title, like middle school ambassadors. And this is where your middle school students might show some interest in wanting to be leaders. And it's done in many different ways. Some districts do like what they call best buddies. There's different ways that we can encourage our students to take an interest in wanting to help us with the teacher pipeline. But another way is to have some of our paraprofessionals who are already in the classrooms with our teachers, to tap them to see what interest they might have in not just supporting in a support role as a paraprofessional, but actually going back to school and getting a degree. There have been various programs in certain states where we actually get funding and money. We could tap into some of those resources. We get funding and money for our staff to go. Now, there's a requirement though. If the state and the district helps pay for it, they have to commit to so many years. So those are some of the things that I would say have worked.
With limited resources and funding in our district, what innovative approaches have you implemented to create expense savings in one area that has been redirected to areas of greater need, greater impact? What opposition did you face in redirecting those funds, and how did you overcome that opposition? What results were achieved?
I think the one thing that we probably all face in education is, how do we do more with less? And that's always concerning on many levels. I think first and foremost, we never want to touch the classrooms as our first resource. We never want to do that. So we typically start with the outer layers. It's like peeling an onion, right? Where the classroom is in the center of that onion. We start with layers on the outside, and we look at ways that we can be more resourceful with our staff, and look at ways that maybe we don't need as many staff. So I'm going to give you an example of something. For example, let's use HR. So if in your HR department, you are blessed to have lots of bodies that are busy, they really are, they're doing work, they're busy, I don't want to take anything from them, they're doing their work. But you might find through processes and procedures that if we figure out a way to automate, we don't actually need this many support staff to do this particular job. And it's not that you want to take a job from anybody. I don't want anybody to think, oh, she's coming in here, she's trying to take people's jobs. But when you don't have money, you have to think outside the box and think of ways that you can keep the workflow moving, but maybe not with human capital. So automation was a way that we were able to do this. And actually automation works really well, because some of the things you do, with the click of a button, you've done it. You don't have to have 5 different people sending out paperwork. You've done it with the click of the button, and it goes to the next person who might need to deal with that step. And it's more efficient. Everyone can see it at the same time. And it's money now that you can redirect the classroom. That's really kind of in some ways a sore topic for me, because the last thing I want to do is have to take away money. You know, that's somebody's job, that's their livelihood. But at the end of the day, if you don't have money, you have to figure out where you can direct the resources, and or we have to reach out to our community partners and state legislators to find out how we can get more funding. That's very important as well.
Thank you. So it appears that we do have some time for Q&A here. We'd just like to open it up and give you an opportunity to ask any questions of us.
Great, you get to do. So I do have a question for you. Communication. What do you believe would be necessary if I were your superintendent to help have a better communication protocol? What do you feel like you don't have, or what do you believe you need? Or maybe a fair question is, maybe you don't know, but I want to put that out there. Communication being the topic. What can I do to help facilitate more streamlined transparency and communication?
If you don't mind, something I thought about earlier and didn't get a chance to share, which is fine. I think communication is very important to me in many different ways because we communicate differently and the needs are also very vast. Meaning, some of us prefer the more direct in-person communication. Some within a form of electronic communication or written form of communication. And then, of course, then you have other types of ways in which you can communicate and engage with the community. And that might be some of the things that I've heard you mention, right? With having in-person meetings or forums where you're able to connect with the community and with the parents. So I think that's one of the something that is missing. I know that, it's one of those things where there are many big rocks to move. But I really like to see more, I think, intention in the approach to really not just in engaging with the community, but to truly communicate in the best possible, like, transparent way that you're able to. I think that's a problem that we are experiencing in the district for several years now, where things happen and we will hear about it maybe months later, or it wouldn't come from the district. And it would be perhaps like an expose, we read it in the news, and then we're then as parents and community come together through our networks and ask those questions. And even so, it's very limited coming from the district, and we want to know. And I think that we're grown, and to the extent legally possible, I think a lot of times that's a very cowardice approach is to kind of like pour that into the whole legal jargon as in like, well, it's pending investigation, therefore we're not able to share anything with you.
There's two pieces to this. I think the biggest part for me is reciprocal communication. When we were having difficulties at Emerson, I brought them to teachers, to the principal, to the assistants. And they went up into a void, like Sunny mentioned earlier. Like the further you go up, the less answers you get. And I know you touched on sort of having these paths of communication. Like if I have a question or an issue with, X, Y, Z, how do I get answers? And that's really unclear right now. And the other piece is when there are big decisions made by the district, for those to be communicated to families and students with an explanation of why. I think there's sometimes decisions that are made that don't look like they're in the best interest of students or families, and they don't come with an explanation. And that would go a long ways.
Yeah, I guess I'd add that, like what Olivia was saying, it's very one-sided right now. Information just gets passed down. We don't have a way or pathway to actually have our voices be heard, nor do we know how to actually get to where we need to. But as you were pointing out, Dr. Stokes, with like having some kind of process or procedure with you can expect communication from the district about these topics. We will use this form of communication. And when I say that, it should be varied because not everyone has access to computer technology. They're not privileged to actually then have those, I guess that kind of access. And so phone, email, print, you name it, get the news out there because you do want to get the news out there because you're being intentional about that. And that, I guess, for me, just understanding that there is some kind of protocol or process and procedure would actually then help, like put me at ease with regards to, okay, I know that, I will get some form of communication, but not only that, the other half would be, okay, so if I have problems, who do I reach out to? How do I get to the chain? So, and I don't know what that looks like. It could be more regular town halls, something along that lines, but I'm very much a face-to-face person as well too. Because then you can clearly direct your intentions, but not only that, you can actually gauge whether or not, you know, something's gonna happen or not. And so it's a very good like read for me right away. It's gonna go somewhere, it's not gonna go somewhere. Can we just address it right now so that I don't have to run around and try to figure out when can I get on your schedule?
I would just add that I think, something that would be great in communication is, and this does happen at times, but if there's a large decision that's being made, to put that to the parents or the students and to say, okay, there's a big decision, we can do A, B, or C. And what is your input on whether we should do A, B, or C? And maybe a little bit of free text to go along with that, so you capture the sentiment of why people might have wanted to go down one path or the other, and then that becomes part of the decision-making process. It's not a democracy. I don't think that, you know, those votes are binding, but I think they should be considered as part of the overall decision, and then ultimately the decision that's made, the communication can happen around, we decided to do this.
Here's why.
Here's why, here's what the votes were, you know, and this is why we decided to go one way or the other. I think that would be a great addition to the communication. And again, there are surveys like that happen at times, but I think there's an opportunity to be doing that even more often.
Just add really quickly that I think one of the things to consider is just what is your leadership style. And so I think we've had so they're very collaborative, want input, but that necessarily hasn't been played out. And so I think what I'm looking for is a superintendent that comes in and feels leadership is very collaborative, and the students and the parents and the teachers are all intelligent beings, and respected as such. And I think a big responsibility for things don't go right all the time. And I think to us respectfully about the student go, okay, here's what we're doing about it, and here's how we're addressing it, or here's how we can't. I think would be a way to communicate.
Thank you for that. Rest your thoughts about leadership style and collaboration. I am very much somebody, and I'm not just saying this, you'll see boots on the ground, you might even get sick of me if I get this position. I really do believe in the power of collective effort and voice from parents. You know best in different ways that research has not shown how to support your children. We do have to have action research to be able to support children and meet their needs, because they are varied needs. And to do that, we have to collaborate with our leaders in the buildings, our teachers, our principals, our central office staff, and our community. And in saying that, I do always want to make it clear when we talk about collaboration. Collaboration doesn't mean that, in some cases, yes, but it doesn't mean it's by a majority vote that we do things, because we all know that there are sometimes situations where there are federal guidelines that you have to follow. And some things, whether we like it or not, FERPA protects certain rights and privacy about things. But I think that if we explain those things to parents, they better understand, well, here's why they couldn't actually tell us who was involved in this particular situation or what was going on. But with all of that, collaboration is important, because we may want to do something systemically that's kind of a need across the districts, but we find out that in a particular building, yes, that's a need, but it has a twist in this particular building. And here's what we need to do. And how did we find that out? From our parents, from our students, from our staff. And so while we're meeting that need, we're also targeting what is needed in that particular building to meet the actual university. Any more questions?
I think that we have about 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. I have a question. She made me think of something. Let me ask you, what is it that you believe we could do if you had a magic wand, boots on, like in the next 2 weeks, for you as a parent that would ease your mind about your child's supports in the building or your child's proficiency growth on whatever assessments that they're taking. What is it that we could do to ease your mind about the direction that your child is going in the schools when it comes to their teaching and learning?
Can start, and I think that for me, one would be for thinking about my kid and the peers that she hangs out with, and from other parents as well, might be budget, making sure that we know for sure there's enough allocation for programs, for mental health support, for other activities throughout the school, and that information is communicated in a way that is easy to digest. That I don't have to sit down and watch a 4-hour meeting in YouTube to learn 3 things, for example. But just having like the peace of mind that the school has the support that they need, and if we know that there is going to be a difficult situation, that the teachers, the staff there have the resources to deal with them, and again that the budget is there to support that. So I think that there's a lot of work around there, but just knowing that would be what the plan is for the future. That would be good on all this in my mind for the next 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Two things that comes to mind is really on sustainability and consistency. From a sustainability perspective, I'm thinking of budget, like consistency of certain programmings that may be introduced, because we've had some funding issues, in terms of deficit, with just not having enough funds and having to stretch the limited amount of money that we do have, and how some of the programs that are achieving great outcomes potentially could be placed on the chopping block, not because it's not producing the outcome, perhaps it's just not somehow not ranked high in the priority. And I think staff retention is a big part of it. We've seen a lot of turnovers, not just from building principals, but from staffing in general overall. And then consistency would be, again, from various programs like innovation, pilot programs that were implemented, and then and really nothing became of it in terms of like a sustainability to keep them going.
So if I put your 2 questions together, if you knew that our budget situation was firmed up and that we have the money and the resources that we need to keep what you said, some of our innovative supports and programs that are in place. And what I would say then is a lot of districts, and I'm sure here too, have to run what we call a referendum. So what I would say to you is that should we be in a position where we have to run a referendum, you are ambassadors to talk about why it's important for us to have the funding so that we can keep these innovative programs. And my job is to support a referendum and to message the need behind it. But more importantly, I have to be an ambassador to work with the legislators to direct more dollars to our schools. Our teachers do deserve salaries that they can afford to live in the very city that they work in. Legislation around how much we can actually give in terms of pay raises or things like that. So I say all that to say what you both said is very important. Budgetary constraints are always one of the #1 priorities. And or increase those funds so that we can keep what we value via programming, actually making a difference in the lives of our children.
Add 2 things. We've already talked about communication and how important that is. But consistent communication from superintendent on to the parents. Real-time communication. If we can, something's happening with the parents, I think parents are your biggest partner. As you mentioned in answering some of your questions, that parents, we know the students, we are your best advocate and support when it comes to our children. And we can get the job done, even if it can't be done in the classroom. I can make sure I can get the job done in my home to make sure that the school's needs are met in supporting our students. So partnership with parents and that consistent communication with parents and what you're noticing, what you're seeing, or schools, teachers are seeing and support. I've had some instances where it's report card time, even though I'm checking in, mom and myself, we're checking in with the teachers, but some of the things we hear about at report card time or what's it called, parent teacher conference time is not what we're hearing throughout the week when we're checking in. And we're surprised by the information because there are some things we could have done had we known. And so that's some of the things
whether it's mine or yours on your jobs or teachers, I look at student evaluations the same to say it shouldn't be a surprise. You should know or expect that here's what was going on. And if there is a surprise, it should just be, she pulled it off at the last minute. And here's some great news to share. So I agree, communication is important. But I do want to say it's a two-way street. We also need to hear from you as parents and not just those critical something's happened and, we need to hear from you about what you believe is going well. That helps teachers, that helps morale, what you believe is going well and how it's making a difference in the lives of your children. We need to hear that as well, because that helps us know, that's like action research. Hey, we need to do more of this. It's working for this group of students. So.
Chime in? No? That being said, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you taking the time out to address your concerns, or our concerns rather, and we wish you the best.
Thank you so much, and you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. We're gonna continue, okay? Hi, and welcome, Dr. Goddard. Great. My name is Angela Jenkins, and we'll be serving as the lead panelist for tonight's parent and caregiver interview session. Want to first thank you for being here with us tonight, and also to congratulate you as for being one of the finalists in this process. Before we get started, just want to highlight the format of our time together here. We do plan to cover 6 questions in a lot of time for us, which is roughly 35 minutes. And that being said, just trying to make sure that we stay on task and recommending that you spend perhaps no more than 5 minutes in your response to then allow for some time at the end of our session for questions that you may want to ask us. I do ask that all of us speak into the microphone to ensure that our conversation is audible for our audience who are watching us live or the recording. And also to ensure that we stay on time, Mallory in black there has graciously volunteered to be our timekeeper. I mentioned my name is Angela, and I do have a 5th grader at Lowell Elementary and also an 8th grader at O'Keefe Middle School here on the east side of Madison. We've been in Madison for about 20 years. I mean, for the most part, we tell folks that we're Madisonians, but I think that's debatable perhaps. And definitely 9 years in, overall 9 years in the MMSD community. I come from a multiracial and multilingual family, and yeah, looking forward to our time together. I will pass it over to Otis for intro.
My name is Otis Harris Jr., and I'm a native of Madison, product of MMSD. I have a 9th grade at Baldwin High School and a 4K that is transported and supported by MMSD to Wisconsin School of the Deaf. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Sunny Tao, and I actually have 2 kids in MMSD, both enrolled at Lakeview Elementary in the bilingual program. One is in kindergarten and the other one is in 2nd grade.
Good evening, Mario Garcia, Sierra here. I have one kid. It's in 8th. She's in 8th grade here at Battle Rock. Mentality Charter School, focusing on sustainability, project-based learning. We're also multicultural family, bilingual family, and I've been here in Madison 20 years. And a lot of connections to MMSD.
Evening, my name is April Kigana, and I have an 8th grader at Hamilton, and I myself am also at the MMSD.
Hi. Ooh. I'm Mallory Garcia. I'm a 1st grader at Wilson Elementary School. Hi, my name is Olivia Jones. I'm a 4th grader at Emerson Elementary, and we've been in Madison for about 10 years.
Thanks for being here and welcome back to Madison. My name is Jamie Becker, a recent 2023 graduate, as well as a senior at West.
Hi, my name is Matt Becker, and I have a 3rd and 4th grader at Marquette Elementary.
Great. So before we get started, I'd like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to us.
So my name is Joe Goddard, and first of all, it's very nice to meet you. Thank you for doing this. It's really great for you as parents and really across the board. Early childhood on to graduates. It's really exciting. I am a graduate of Madison Metropolitan School District and spent 18 years of my career here. I started as an educational assistant. Well, first of all, I went to Alameda Senate and LaFollette High Schools. I started as an educational assistant to the district, 93 at Lincoln Elementary. Was encouraged and nudged to finish up that degree. So I began teaching biology in my freshman biology class at LaFollette High School. Was a coach there dean of students, left to become principal at Toki Middle School, went back to Lafayette as principal, and then was assistant superintendent of secondary schools for the district. In 2013, I left, and I left with much love for this community, with experiences that continue to make my everyday practices as an educator, as a parent, as a colleague. And I left for Burnsville, Minnesota, where I was the superintendent for 4 years. And I'm currently 6.5 years into my tenure at St. Paul Public Schools, the second largest district in Minnesota and the most diverse. In those experiences, I have a lot that I could share, but I think it would probably be best if I see what's on your mind and to see how I can share my experiences with how you've experienced Madison Metropolitan School District.
Great, thank you. We'll have Otis to kick us off.
What systems have you implemented to ensure school safety and address disruptive classroom behavior? How have you balanced the needs of the students, teachers, the overall classroom to make sure the environment is conducive to learning and all students? What results were achieved?
Really great question, and something that I think school districts are truly focused on or must be committed to. Having a safe environment both in and out of the classroom, in and out of the school, it has become incredibly important. I can share with you that as recent as in the last year, I have gone through some very, very difficult school and community violence that has impacted everything we do as a school district, whether it's the exact school or community that's impacted or across the district. Being a close city, close knit with a lot of relationships, it's been challenging. So a few things that we did, I recognized last spring upon surveying our stakeholders that there was a difference in responses from the adults throughout our system and the students in our system. I'm talking mainly 6th through 12th grade students, secondary students, and it caused me to think I need to spend more time with our students. I want to understand exactly what's on our students' mind. So I spent 9 full days with high school students last spring. We bus students into a community center and we did some whole group sessions and then some small group sessions where I was able to spend time in each of those planning sessions with students. And at the end of the day, they presented their findings to me, their recommendations to me, their advocacy to me. Our district at the time, when we compiled all the data, really came to this conclusion that safety isn't the absence of fear. Safety is the presence of connection. And it is completely, I shouldn't say completely, but it's really reshifted my focus and given me a different lens to look at in terms of what school safety means. Because I can follow policy and apply discipline. I did that for a number of years of my career. I can tell you that the impact of that and the positive outcomes of that, sure, it might have lasted for a short time, but I don't know if it really got to the point that our students are looking for, and that's connection. Students need to feel seen, heard, valued each and every day, consistently, peer to peer, adult to peer, and it's important that we find and that we support our school communities to behave and to act in that way. One of the things I heard from students clearly, getting short on time, is that they did not feel safe through the pandemic. We, like many districts, were short bus drivers, so we had to change our transportation greatly. We had to use Metro Transit, a little bit different than Metro Transit in Madison that has special routes using city buses. These are public routes. And it was a big change for our students, for our families, and safety came up consistently from the sessions that I held with students. I heard advocacy just after winter break. We start all of our handle buses back for students at high school, and the results have been great. And I don't think, had I spent that time with our students to really hear from them at tables just like this, that we would have made that kind of change. A change in times of really difficult budgets. It became a priority based on what our students are experiencing, how they're experiencing school. One other thing that I'll share with you, a practice that I do think has become enterprise-wide, our entire district is using, especially, actually it's at our elementary schools as well, building walkthroughs where peers are walking through peers' buildings and they're looking for systems and structures in place to help support a positive nurturing school environment. And the feedback that I'm receiving from those visits has been wonderful. We have a lot of principals with different experiences, some from out of district, some who have been in our district for a number of years. And I think there's always a time for us to create that time for reflection. What's working well and what can we learn from one another? What can we use at our school to help? And again, the feedback that I'm getting is that's become a very promising practice. At first, just our secondary schools, our elementary principals and buildings started hearing about it, and they wanted to do the same. I think that's a really positive sign that people are looking for ways to change systems to support students and to support. I think lastly, we removed SROs from our high schools in 2020, and clearly we had to come up with a different way to support some of the 2, 3 crisis situations in our schools. I'm really proud of the fact that we've been able to establish a very positive partnership with the police department and with the community office of neighborhood safety. The regular communication that we have, I believe, leads us to be able to support students with more of a care response than a crisis response or reaction response. And we're able to get ahead of a lot of very small level situations before they become unmanageable. And again, I think this is due in part to our ability to communicate and the willingness of our schools to really be flexible and thoughtful about putting their students' needs first and making sure that all students feel safe and respected and valued at their school community.
All right, we'll move on to question 2 here. What strategies have you found most effective in balancing the diverse learning needs of student groups, including students with disabilities, multi-language learners, and advanced learners? Please provide specific examples of your approach for each group and highlight the key decisions made in creating an inclusive and equitable learning.
I think the first when I think about students with disabilities, I know for a fact that the pandemic only opened our eyes perhaps to some of the challenges that students and families face in supporting students. It was an incredible challenge. And I think it's led to us really looking and rethinking our service delivery model and doing it in a time where staffing is challenging. It's short, so we've had to do more with less. We've had to be more thoughtful and do it perhaps with fewer people, whether it's licensed teachers or support staff, and that's real. And I can feel that when I'm in schools, when I'm out talking with our school staff, it's at every meeting I can predict that I'm going to hear something about staffing and support for students receiving specialized services. I'll also say that the values of inclusion that I have in me began in kindergarten here at Madison. I remember different able students in my classrooms from the time I started school here, and it's one of the things I really value and treasure time in MST is the value of inclusion. And it's really hard when promise to deliver to families, promise to deliver to students supports they need to be successful, that access, the most appropriate opportunities for their development to meet their AP goals. And we can't deliver. And I think that it takes one, communication. We've got to be we have to be willing to sit down and have really difficult conversations at times, whether that's an IEP team, whether that's a new way to support a student. And I think first and foremost, we want to be sure that we're allowing our students to be in their least restrictive environment for as much of their day as possible with the support that is needed, that's necessary. When we move into bilingual learners, my current district is 30% students who receive English language services. It is by far the expectation that students, that biliteracy is an asset that we must embrace in our school district. To give you some examples of this, the state of Minnesota has seals of biliteracy. In the last 7 years, we've issued 2,700 seals of biliteracy in 17 languages. And those 2,700 seals of biliteracy equate to roughly $11 million in college credit. 10 to 20 credits are earned when a student receives their seal of biliteracy. Some of these seals of biliteracy are coming through dual language immersion programs that we offer in a multitude of languages. But others are due to students who come to us fluent in their native language and embracing that as their first and primary language and establishing proficiency. So we're on our students who and what they bring to their classroom, which is the hall school district. For advanced learner students, we of course offer many different types of advanced learning from college and schools to post-secondary educational options, which in Wisconsin is, I'm trying to remember the program where students can earn college credit on campus. I used to oversee it here. I just forget what it was called at this time. And predictable, I can tell you which students access those advanced learning classes and which students do not. So it's our job to really identify at a much earlier age and begin the opportunity of promoting advanced learning rigorous opportunities much, much earlier. It's far too late many times when a student has taken their first advanced class in its sophomore year. They're overwhelmed many times. That is the only experience a student needs to say, I'm done with this. We need to promote that to students at a much younger age, whether it's through reading strategies that we're using to make sure that students are proficient in learning to read, so they can read and learn at the highest level possible. And I think that we also need to make sure that we're offering advanced learning in relevant areas as well. It's one thing to have traditional advanced learning pathways, but we all also know that the world has changed around us in an incredible way. The idea of high demand and high wage careers are different than they were 20 years ago. And there's many ways that we can apply advanced learning that can lead to students leaving MMSD with credentials, with a 2-year degree for the future that can be really successful. And a lot of these opportunities did not exist 20 years ago when a 4-year degree was thought to be the only way that you could be successful. So I'm really proud to look at advanced learning in terms of students and families are wanting their children to receive in school in the traditional way that we've done it. I also think we have an opportunity to redefine what advanced learning can mean. And it also doesn't mean that we have to reduce or change the way that we've also served advanced learners for a number of years in MMSD. It's a real pride point. I've lived that in many different positions that I've had in the district.
Some MMSD schools are populated with children of dual income, well-educated homeowners who have access to supplemental resources. Other schools in MMSD are in attendance areas where the majority of students live in low income or transitional housing, with caregivers struggling to meet basic needs. What specific programs or policies have you used to address these opportunity and resource gaps across different school areas in the same district?
Yeah, it's a great question. Knowing that MMSD continues to be such a strong neighborhood school district, now I've seen the actual flip side of that. So in a district that has 68 schools and has regional and citywide magnets, I've seen what happens when you open up transportation throughout the city so that students can access programs of their choice. And I'm talking dual language immersion, talking Montessori, talking expeditionary learning, environmental STEM, aerospace. So these are the kinds of innovative schools that can be offered. Now, the flip side of that is breaking up a neighborhood, perhaps breaking up a community. And I think that I've seen the positive and negatives of that in terms of the challenges that it has, and transportation being just one of them, but also holding a school community together. And sometimes it can become very difficult when you have that many choices to hold that neighborhood community school, especially if it doesn't have the same level of enrollment that perhaps it did previously. And now you're at a point where it's really difficult to continue to offer a well-rounded education in that community school. And some would say at the expense of the other magnet programs that you're moving students from to their choice programs. So it's something that has to be delicately balanced. My current district didn't get there overnight. But again, once you start to offer and make opportunities like that, it really does open up people to want more choices. And in our case, and I think this leads to revenue, I think there's a revenue question maybe later in here. We receive revenue from enrollment, a 3-year rolling average enrollment in MMSD. And MMSD is at a pretty stable enrollment for quite some time. But there have been some very challenging statistics nationally, demographically, about the future of school-age children, in our communities, in our cities, in our country. So it's something we have to pay particular attention to, that if we're not offering innovative experiences, students don't feel supported, and perhaps students don't have choices here in MMSD that they might in adjoining communities or other options they may choose. It could really impact our future from a budget standpoint as well, if we're not able to maintain, stabilize, and sustain our enrollment. And if I could just add one thing before the next question, I didn't answer that fully. That was a long one. I think that to close some of the opportunity gaps, again, ensuring that we have a district-wide centralized placement center, and they are well versed from a lingual standpoint, from making sure that students' needs can be met, to make sure that there are appropriate placements when students are new to our district. I think that's really important as well. It's not just chance that a student ends up at a particular school. We truly try to meet each student and family and understand what their educational needs might be and help inform the families so that the best choice can be made as possible. There has to be really intentional effort. If your district portfolio has, dozens of choices, it has to be a very intentional engagement.
To build trust, transparent communication is key. Please describe how you have implemented systems of clear and reciprocal communication between administration, individual schools, teachers, staff, families, and students. How will you learn about the MMSD community and rebuild trust so you can appropriately represent and collaborate with all members of the community?
So a few different ways that in our current district, we use the international spectrum of participation, which is a continuum of making sure that you're very intentional with communities that you're engaging with. And from the lowest level of inform, if I say that, on this decision, we're going to inform the community, it could be something like this. We don't have school tomorrow, there's a snow day. Trust me, none of you want to be up at 4 a.m. making that decision. So that is a decision that is made by district leaders, and the community will be informed. Empowerment is the end of the spectrum where information is provided to stakeholders, such as parents, and you are given the ability to make the decision. And I can think of a few times where that has been used recently. One is we developed a new, and I'll be very quick on this so I can get through the rest of the question. There's been a real push for a Somali language stream to be taught in our school district. And we had a group of parents, community leaders, and staff come together last year and begin a work group late winter into the spring about the opportunity to create this kind of school. And their work was so inspiring, and their commitment was so just extraordinary. That we opened the all in East African Elementary Magnet School, thought to be the first of its kind in the country. And the opportunity that we had is that a number of Somali children and families in the district were choosing public charter schools, and they were choosing to leave the district to have their students served. And I thought we had this open school in our community. There's a desire from families. And, for me, it wasn't a matter if we were going to create this school, as when. And I put it back on the committee. And said, do you want to open the school? And they said, fall. And I supported them. Support them to our community, to our board, again, in a time where resources are very scarce in terms of the priorities that we're making. Hearing from families served is our greatest priority. The school has over 200 students in it. There's a waiting list for pre-K. We're expanding to 6th grade next year. And I'm happy to report that around 70% of the children in that school came back to the district from their choices they made. So again, started with engagement. And engagement informing versus here's some information. Use this information to come up with a recommendation for administration to consider. And it was the right decision. It was the right decision because it was based on our families and that work and our staff's commitment. So I think some other examples of that, just my style. One is that share this with a number of groups. You know, when superintendents are new to a community, and I've been a superintendent a couple times now in my 11 years. It's real easy to be out and be flashing, be seen, and it's new and it's exciting and all that. But I've continually found ways to act like I'm my first year all the time. Our schools are changing every year, staff, families. You know, I need to continue to go out so I can understand what the present needs are in each of our school communities. So a way that you might see me showing up to a staff meeting is like this. It's not a big show. There's no cameras. There's not a notebook. I have a photographer with me. It's usually me looking at a staff and asking them one simple question. What's on your mind? And it's as simple as that. And in those meetings, many times you'll hear everyone go around, everybody hold a talking piece in somewhat of a restorative circle, where they're each able to share a challenge or an opportunity. Otherwise, it's been very specific things, and it's almost turned into a kind of an action plan where I'm getting some great information and I'm, you know, challenging some of the conversations so I can make sure that back to my team, I take information we can implement some action on. And it's been a really effective way. It's not always perfect, but I think staff, even though they may be frustrated, I think feeling heard is really important. And with 68 schools, it's challenging. With 53, I think MMSD is up to it's challenging as well. But it's a commitment that I have. Spent so many, you know, on my career in schools, and it's where I feel comfortable getting the information that I need so that I can also be accountable to the community and to the Board of Education. Be sure that I answered all that. Trust, I think, is in rebuilding trust. And I heard this in not certain terms today, but I heard it said a few different ways. But it's one thing to be there and shake your head and write down a few notes. It's another thing to act, to know people to see that if you say what you do what you say. That's really important to me as well. And also being honest and upfront. I mean, if there are things that we just cannot do because the constraints are so great, I need to be forthright with that as well. Managing expectations is really important. And I also understand there's cultural nuances to that as well. You know, some of our communities have been historically underserved. If you go to a meeting and you say be patient, I can tell you how that's going to feel and how that's going to land. Not very well. So and there's some real urgency to our work. There's managing dynamics of cultural difference that I think is really important as a leader and as a community, so that we can be really honest with each other and build a trustworthy, you know, connection. This is a partnership.
Can you outline your strategy for supporting and empowering the staff? And recruitment.
Sure, I'll just give, you know, an example of that. I mean, we, you know, leading a large district and leading a senior executive leadership team, of course, a lot of decisions come to me. And there are a few things that are important to me with those decisions. First, I want to know who made the recommendation. I want to know what other options were considered. I want to know what some of the other considerations were, what some of the resource ramifications are. And I want to know who was engaged with in order to make that recommendation. This could come from a department, a work team. It could come from any number of different work groups that we have that are doing the work of keeping a school district relevant and moving forward. And recent one is we had a math curriculum adoption, the first one in 4 years that I care to admit, a long time. And in that, there was a opportunity for more than 300 teachers to participate in both a K-5 and a 6 through 12. Actually, I think it was middle school and high school in 3 separate groups. And they were able to make recommendations for the curriculum that they chose, that they preferred. And that was the decision that was made. That was honored. So they were part of the research. They were part of vetting. They were part of piloting or using some of the materials that were provided. And ultimately, they were given the ability to make the decision. I wasn't on those work teams, but that decision document, that decision information came to my team And we explored and I looked through and our team reviewed, and these were the critical questions that we answered. And had I not had that clarity of information, I would have rejected that decision. I would have sent it back and said, you know, there needs to be engagement. I need to understand that our staff are going to be behind this because it's the first curriculum adoption in this area in a long time. We want to get it right. We want to get it right in service of our students, but also do it that's going to support staff with curriculum that they can use, that they can implement, that they can become really innovative and proficient with as well. The second part is some ways that I've improved teacher retention and recruitment. Well, I'll name a couple of ways that are going to end pretty soon. Unfortunately, is with the expiration of ARP funds, we were able to offer significant bonuses to our hardest to fill areas. And to my neighboring districts, I apologize a little bit, but we needed staff and needed to incentivize staff to come to our district. And I'm really happy that we were able to do that. We had the support of our board to do that. We may not have been 100% filled, but we sure were able to fill some very difficult and challenging, hard to fill areas. But we've also created a workforce retention team. And you know, the traditional approach of trying to reach out to people once problems exist or once someone has left or said they're going to leave to do some sort of exit stage or exit interview, you know, pretty traditional approach to how we retain employees. And we have been able to provide enough support that we're actually able to work with new to the district teachers to do stay interviews, meaning that we're checking in regularly, routinely with new employees to find out what's going on and what are the challenges. And we're trying to mitigate those challenges early on so we don't even get to an exit interview. You know, so we're able to keep and retain our staff. And some data that I can share with you, I believe we have a 12% increase in licensed staff of color since 2022. And our retention rate was about 69% last year. And of course, some of that's budget related, but there has been really great collaborative work going on for our unions, our bargaining groups and administration to retain as many licensed staff of color as possible. In every space that I'm in, that is a number 1, 2, or 3 priority. Doesn't matter what the subject is, it comes up some way that we want staff and teachers specifically to reflect our students. So this retention and recruitment has become incredibly important. The real challenge is it's a strategy for just about every district, especially in metro or a region like Dane County, of wanting, you know, very limited pool of teachers to teach in their school to reflect their students. So again, we've got to work harder. School age, we've got to look for ways to create education pathways for students, perhaps inspire the next generation. Who knows? A biracial kid from the east side may end up being the superintendent of MSD someday. That didn't happen by chance. It happened because I had mentors who guided me, who gave me opportunities and encouraged me and supported me along my journey. And the same should be true for scores of MSD students in the future too, if they choose that. If they choose that education is something, their community is something that they're passionate about, I think it's a real opportunity for us.
With limited resources and funding, what innovative approaches have you implemented to create expense savings in one area that has been redirected to areas of greater need and greater impact? What opposition did you face in redirecting those funds, and how did you overcome that opposition? What results were achieved?
Yeah, and I don't know that it's so much reducing fund. So we're a priority-based budgeting district, of course, through the pandemic that looked a whole lot different than it did in 2018, 2019. But the first thing that we have to understand is, do we have a strategic framework, strategic plan that is guiding decisions that we make? What are the priorities of the district? And while I can certainly create that from an administrative standpoint and create strategies and say, this is what we're going to fund because this is our strategic plan, that doesn't necessarily mean that that matches with the needs of the community. So this year we've taken it a step further at the encouragement of our Board of Education. We did a great deal of engagement, thousands of surveys and focus groups to try to establish what are the values that our community holds in terms of the budgetary decisions that we're going to have to make. And out of this engagement, we've learned three things: that literacy, safe schools and safe spaces, and a sense of belonging are the values that our community holds as their highest priorities. So when you have a strategic plan that is guiding the strategic decisions and directions of the district, and you have values that the community holds, it serves as a really good roadmap for you to prioritize where resources are spent. So here's an example. Our district received $207 million of ARP funds at a time where we didn't have the ability to spend that. To spend $200 million in the time bound that we had, that was an incredible task for us. So we created a whole new team that would look at our funds differently, align it to our plan, create strategies, implement the strategies, monitor the progress of the strategies, and evaluate the overall efficacy of how did we do. The strategies that I'll speak of right now is a strategy we call WIN. WIN stands for What I Need Now. It is our literacy strategy based on the science of reading, serving K through 2 students. Teachers were trained, and we hired 84 of them to implement tier 1 interventions during students reading 75-minute literacy blocks at their school. The work and the seamlessness of this to have 2 or more adults in a classroom and able to get to students who need it most based on data that we keep and monitor their progress. This strategy has been incredible. How do I know that? It's one of the first academic strategies that I've seen where I've not gotten a single negative email teacher or from a staff member. And it's because they're working really hard at it and they're able to see progress right in front of us. It's been just wonderful to see. Well, the ARP funding is going away. So there are 84 teachers who are funded from federal grants. I heard from the community, this is a value we hold. I know based on our data that we have a lot of work to do in literacy. So it's a decision that we're going to make. So the revenue that it takes for those 84 teachers that are assigned to that strategy has to come from somewhere. We're not going to get, supplemented with additional funds for that. And those are decisions that we're going through right now. The process that we've created is called STOP, Start, and Sustain. Obviously, we started our WIN strategy. We're going to sustain it, and something has to stop in order for us to do that. So we are in the process of vetting more than 400 individual strategies for different things that we've implemented. And we know that once the expiration of the ARP funds take place, we're not going to be able to fund that entire stack. And it is a paper stack that our teams have been going through. And we recently engaged our Board of Education as well. The challenge is that each one of those is important, but what we want to find and prioritize are those that have really good progress so that we can see that it's making a difference. And that'll be the first sort of things. Some of the strategies were great on paper, but they never really got off their own. Maybe there wasn't staff there to do it. Maybe it was a creative partnership with an organization. But do that X, Y, Z never happened. We're not going to do those. Those are too already. We want to be able to fund what the priorities are, and again, based on the values of our community as well. I mentioned buses earlier. Safe schools is another. I'm comfortable knowing that we were going to reinvest additional funds into our buses because it was a value that our community held, and I certainly heard it from our students. So that's one way that I believe we've been able to prioritize how our money is spent and ensuring that it is going to the betterment of our students. And if there's opposition with that, opposition is a chance to grow and learn. Opposition is a chance to hear why people feel either disrespected or heard or marginalized or not part of the decision. I think that's an important part of any major decision that's made. I would say to this one, we heard from our community, our dad did this, we've got a strategy that's really working well. That's by our school district.
Great, thank you. That concludes our portion of the question, and I would like to open it up and provide you with the opportunity to ask questions of the panel here tonight.
Remembering the ages of your children, and I guess what I'd like to know is maybe a couple of you from perhaps a parent who has students who are on the end of the run here. Congratulations, you're a graduate, by the way. Some of the greatest opportunities that your children have received. And as you reflect back on however many years they've been in MSD, and maybe to some that are at the very start, what are you most looking forward to? What has you excited about the future of MSD?
With a freshman as well as a 4K, what I look for most or am excited about is the opportunity for my children, my youngest, to find and be found by the teacher that would love her all the way through graduation. I found even in my experience as a student that there were educators that loved me for I still had some issues, but were able to overcome that because of the love and the support. And even though there were teachers that went the extra step, educators that went the extra step to love me, to love, and so that's what I'm looking for. So yes, the education piece is very important, extremely. But then those that would continue to love and to what we would consider caring adults. That's what I'm excited about. Part of my youngest and my oldest as well.
I mentioned that my two kids are part of the Hmong Bilingual program. And what's exciting about this opportunity is that they are shouldering the preservation of our heritage essentially, because our language, our culture, cultural practice, etc., it's just withering away. And so it's very exciting to actually have my second grader come home and I'll just on a web say, hey, read this to me. Tell me what it's about. He's got it. And I'm like, wow. I'm just blown away. And so that's very exciting for me. And I hope that the program actually can be bolstered, gets its resources so that we can actually further this, because the impact it's beyond just my children, it's the greater Hmong community. And that's actually a win that I want for MMSD and something to tout about and to know that performative actions were not just conducted, but then that they were really invested in the program, the children, our community.
So my daughter is in first grade, and I think as she goes through the MSD education system, she loves learning, and she's just a sponge right now. And I'd love to just see the opportunities that she gets, because she just takes everything in, and she's telling me about the moon and stars and trees, and it's my favorite tree. So I think just continuing that love of learning, and I know it gets harder as we hit secondary education, but just having those opportunities for her to just really find those strengths and what she really interests that she's in.
I wish I could speak more to overly impressed with, but to keep it honest, my kids started here for Chicago transplants, but they did start the whole thing. And I guess I really appreciated you talking about the sense of safety in terms of feeling belonging and connection. And I think that's one of the things that I've always been in the district, in that my kids, it's never been something that they felt very connected to. And I think that being in middle or in elementary school with teachers, it was a little stronger, but it felt signage, but it wasn't acted. And I think that my last kid, this is last semester, and I was talking with Matt, I care about this community. I still really strongly believe that this district and our education system is a key to a really be engaged community and engaged and feeling connected. Starts from the leadership. And so I appreciate you talking about the act of things and that sense of belonging being important. So that's the thing that I've observed the most.
1 minute.
One more.
No, thank you. Maybe I'll just wrap up based on what I heard. That sense of care and belonging did come up throughout all of your answers. I think it's wonderful to hear. What I want to say to you is thank you so much for being engaged parents, caretakers. Clearly you're here at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night to meet me, but more importantly, you want to make sure that the direction of this district is positive. And I do too. And this partnership is really important. I've spent more than 30 years as an educator, and what's most important to me is that the reason that school districts exist, that's to be excellent for students and support every one of them to the best of our abilities. And to do that as a community is, to me, what's most important. So thank you all very much.